So I started today's class with breathing as slowly and as evenly as we comfortably could. And then at some point, I invited you to, without taking a deeper inhalation to prepare for it, I said, take your same inhalation, which is very small and very delicate, and at the end of the next exhalation, I invited you to pinch your nose and keep your mouth sealed and hold your breath until you started to feel some air hunger. And then let go. I don't think anybody got beyond 8-10 seconds. This is a test developed by Konstantin Buteyko. He is this Russian scientist. I came across his work about, over 25 years ago now. And what he was testing for was our tolerance of CO2 in the body. How quickly did we become hungry for air? And his research found that when you can comfortably hold for 40 seconds, breathing very delicately and then a relaxed exhalation, and you can hold that for 40 seconds, you're at a very high level of health. His work really focused around asthma. And he worked with some people with very hardcore asthma, but he found his work went into other places. I work with it a lot in my breath practice, and when I teach the breath classes, we do what I call sustained pauses to work with that air hunger. That's what we're going to talk about just a little bit today, what I call CO2 intolerance as opposed to tolerance, which we'll talk about a little bit more next time. So my insomnia started in 1975 and went to about 92. And it was horrible. And sometimes it was the whole night. And many nights in a row, sometimes really not fun. And I experimented with all kinds of ways, with my diet, with my exercise, with my yoga practice, with my meditation, so many things. Cold baths every half hour that I was still awake, because cold water stimulates the vagus nerve. I didn't know that at the time. I just know that cold calmed me down. Some of it helped for a little bit, but nothing really lasted very long for me. Other people, it might have helped more. I never took any medication, ever. I was going to nip this in the bud. Deb said she's going to put on my tombstone, I can figure this out. So, and about, I don't know what made me start to think about it, but I started to work on my belly. That's another story about how I started to work with the Hara work on my belly. But the other one was how I started to work with my breath. And I started thinking about breathing. I had been doing tons of yogic breathing and so forth, all of which seemed to aggravate it rather than help it at that time. And I started to say, well, how is the breath moving in the body? And I'm not going to get into all the mechanics, but I noticed this space here when I would, first of all, it was hollowed in. I was born with kind of not a deformity, but a predisposition towards this area sinking in with my chest. And I noticed that when I took a breath in, this area moved in and upward. Now I knew the diaphragm moved down this way, so the things below it shouldn't be moving up and in. And so I just started touching this area, because when I went to bed at night, I could hear my breath very loudly. I knew I was breathing loudly, and that was just, well, that's just the way I breathe. And I would sigh a lot. And by the time I got to 2 or 3 in the morning, I sounded like a steamship. Like I was just breathing so loud and hard, and I couldn't breathe slowly at all. So along with the Hara work, I started just resting my fingertips here, lying at 45 degrees, and trying to just visualize this area moving the way it should, because my diaphragm's moving down. And I noticed those times when I would get it without me assisting it, when there would start to a delicate fullness come into this area, a calmness started coming over me. And I started practicing this more. I started practicing the bottle more. Within 2 months, I got to a point where I didn't care if I slept. I didn't care, because I started to enjoy this so much, like a meditator does. It was starting to calm me down unbelievably. I would rather stay in this position for 3 or 4 hours than go out and do something. It got to be so comfortable. And finally, within 6 months, I was sleeping regularly. When I was doing this breath here and when I was doing the bottle work, sleeping very comfortably. But I practiced it a lot. First of all, because it was very rewarding. Secondly, when I woke up in the morning, I always woke up dysregulated because my breath pattern, when I was asleep, just went back to its pattern. I'd start breathing here. Within a few minutes, all the negative thoughts and stuff were dissipated. And so this became a main practice in my practice. I had no idea why this was doing this. I was breathing, and I also intuitively started breathing as slowly as I could. And I would take it up to a place where I'd feel air hunger. And then I came across Butaiko's work in '95, and not applying his work right away, it was this work, the original work, that brought my insomnia to a close. So what causes air hunger? The primary cause is the normal buildup of CO2 in your blood, not less oxygen. More times than not, you're feeling air hunger and you still have plenty of oxygen to breathe. So it's not the oxygen that's saying it's time to breathe, it's the CO2. And how high that builds up within the normal range in the blood determines how long you can hold your breath in terms of in a quiet, relaxed state. So what causes CO2 intolerance? Well, when our CO2 drops in the blood for various reasons, like I was breathing very shallowly, I was breathing in and up, I was breathing fast, I had anxiety, I had panic attacks. Of course I did, I wasn't sleeping well. I was stressed. All of those things lower CO2 in the blood. And what that does is it throws off the balance of your body's breathing control systems, how your body handles that breath. And as a result, you'd start to develop air hunger much sooner than you needed to. I mean, you're holding here and you're holding and then you hold your breath and you can hold 5 seconds. How can you even imagine being able to hold that for 40 seconds? It's not that you get more O2. So you think CO2 would reduce the need for breathing when it reduces in the blood, but it does just the opposite because of the way it affects the brainstem and the chemoreceptors. They overreact and they lead to CO2 intolerance. So if you're breathing fast or shallow or high, you're going to develop air hunger. You're going to develop chest tightness. You're going to develop things like lightheadedness. You're going to cultivate and enhance your anxiety patterns, your panic patterns, your stress patterns. You're in a sympathetic loop here. And part of it is a result of this breath pattern disorder called CO2 intolerance. You overreact and you sigh a lot because you get that air hunger more quickly, so you yawn a lot more, you sigh a lot more. These are all rescue breaths in a way. They're good, but if you want to become regulated, if you want to be able to deal with your anxieties and panics, lie on your bed, rest your fingertips here, breathe as slowly as you can. Don't worry about the count, just evenly and slowly. That's part of it. But also, our coherent breathing, the emphasis in this class on slow breathing, the act of moving and practicing slow breathing so that when you go out in life, you can move in life and breathe more slowly. And slow is relative to your activity. Lying at 45 degrees in bed, you can get really slow. I was amazed. Some days it got so slow, it was like, am I even breathing? And yet, and Deb has even said, it's blissful to get to this place. It is so blissful, and then you take it out into your life. So CO2 intolerance are just CO2 buildup in the blood is how we regulate when we need to breathe in and out, not your O2. There's often more O2 than you need. So then we've got to balance the CO2 to bring it in harmony with the O2. thanks everybody so much for listening to that.